Okay, good morning, everybody. I think we'll start today with a little of I'm doing a prayer times, and I've done this part of this prayer time on Wednesday. I've done it with everybody on video before. Try to enter in when I teach Kings. I'll quote now at the end. The reason I do this is not to show off. I wrote a little thing a few years ago on addiction recovery from a Christian perspective. And it just tried to give some key scriptures that if people did their little Bible meetings or Christian things, they could have a little routine. And that's kind of how this particular prayer developed. I just prayed some intercession prayers, and I felt once I start doing the videos, then it's a whole different day because I do the rides and I discuss issues. So I figured, let's start it. Let me finish these last verses with you. That way we kind of just confess these. These are for confession. And at the end of this prayer, I'll try and post it today. You have three verses from Peter and James and John, and the New Testament letters, and also a few other things. But I pray this is the day the Lord has made, okay? And we will rejoice and be glad in it. And some scriptures from Peter. Abstain from fleshly lusts that war against the soul. Gird up the loins of your mind and be sober, and hope to the end for the grace that is being brought unto you at the appearing of Jesus Christ. The stone that the builders rejected has become the head of the corner, and this is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. And in the Psalm, that's a quote from the Psalms, that's Peter quoting from the Psalms. And then it says, this is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it, the day of the cross, you see. That's what that's talking about. Peter, we're still in Peter. He that will love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil, and his lips that they speak no guile. Let him seek peace and pursue it. Let him eschew evil, avoid evil. For the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open unto their cry. But the face of the Lord is against those that do evil. Okay? And that's Peter again quoting from Psalms. So those, I have those written down on that addiction recovery. Then we go to James, the letter of James. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed, and when lust has conceived, it bringeth forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near unto God, and he will draw near unto you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Be afflicted, and mourn, and weep. Let your laughter be turned in the morning, your joy to heaviness, before that great and notable day of the Lord. Be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. Okay? If any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, this man's religion is vain. For pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, to keep himself unspotted from the world. And do one from patience. Let patience have a perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, lacking nothing. Okay? And then James talks about, the last chapter of James, talks about Job. We've heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord that is very pitiful. And Elijah, the prophet, who had prayed that it would not rain for the space of 3.5 years, and it did not rain. Interesting. The prophetic ministry of Elijah wasn't just, it was also a silent time, because he was in hiding, all right? I don't want to teach too much. Elijah was in hiding for a period of time from King Ahab. And then we end with John, okay, from 1 John. Behold, what manner of love the Father has bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now we the sons of God, and it does not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Now, the verse from Peter also talked about the appearing. And it's not just the second coming, but it's the Spirit as well, when he visits us. By this we know that we have the requests that we desired of him. This is talking about walking in love and walking in his Spirit, his commandments. And when we do that, our heart does not condemn us. And then we have the petitions that we requested of him. Now those are three, Peter, James, and John. They all say the same there. The eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, okay? And here, James, I don't think I just quoted it, but the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And then John says the same thing. When we're walking in love, when we're walking in truth, then we have the petitions that we requested of him. It's 1 John. And then I end with an important one, the great commandment. Beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. Okay, so we'll start. How many little videos I'll do today, I'm not sure. But I normally, 6 minutes, I normally try to cover any news issues. And this is so, maybe you could see in a little different way. A few years ago, and of course we have controversy. You have people that are referred to as conspiracy theorists at times. But sometimes the conspiracy theorists were actually people that were exposing things that later came out to be true. I covered the shooting death of a cop a few years ago, which was Officer Jenowitz, called G.I. Joe. But when I started talking about it, now I'm not saying I investigated it all myself, but I just read the news sites a lot. And then I began to see that though it was a very famous case, he was a cop by the name of G.I. Joe. I won't do it all again because we're going to talk about some of them. But I said, oh, it looks like he killed himself, committed suicide, and kind of covered it up. But the reason it was a big thing, it was the national media at the time of all the cop problems in the country. And he said 3 people ambushed him and shot him. He gave a description. And so the whole national media, you know, this is a very big thing, okay? So then when it started coming out that he actually did kill himself, because the medical examiner in that particular county where this happened a few years ago, he came out and said, well, it looks like a suicide. They went after that medical examiner in the sense of, you know, defaming him, like this is not. But finally it did come out, and it was a very serious case, because the cop did shoot himself. He was under investigation for stealing money, and he also had put a hit out on a city councilwoman, and they didn't want all that to come out. Okay, what would be the thing now, John, that maybe you would talk about? Okay, the Japanese ship. Maybe I'll title this, Did They Sink Our Battleship, or Attempt to? Just mentioned it the other day. I said it was a Japanese ship. It was a Filipino ship. Okay, a few days ago, one of our top warships, okay, it was a top warship. The fact that it's out of commission now, you know, that's pretty serious. But there was a Filipino merchant ship flying the Filipino flag off the coast of Japan, which is a very busy waterway for merchant ships and trade. And of course our warships are in that area. Now I said how some countries, even though Japan is not like China in the sense that, you know, China's made, you know, statements about our involvement with their building up the islands there in the disputed region of the China Sea. But Japan too has had some things, though an ally in a sense, but Japan, they resent us being there. And there's population that resents us being there. So what happened with the ship the other day, which is world news? The merchant ship, which was flying a Filipino flag, look, you have a lot of ISIS and terrorism in the Philippines, okay? You have a lot of terrorism in the Philippines. So this ship, which was much bigger than our Navy vessel, it rammed into our warship. It almost sunk our ship, and I believe 7 sailors died in that. Okay, so that's big. Almost sunk the ship, but the ship made it back to port. Okay? The media at this point is like, well, it was a terrible accident. But then there was some questions as how the heck could our ship in an area where we're supposed to be, on watch for things that are going on, how would we not detect such a huge vessel heading straight for our ship, our Navy ship? But we didn't. Now, the U.S. ship and the U.S. said that the collision happened at 2:30 a.m. The official Japanese Coast Guard and people that are right there on the scene said it happened at 1:30. Okay, is that a big conspiracy? It's important to know the time, which one is correct. Why? If you simply go online and look at the trajectory of the merchant vessel, the Philippine merchant ship, it was going in a certain path, and it turned. And it turned like it was going after our ship in the early morning. Now, if the 1:30 a.m. collision is the correct time, the reason that Filipino ship turned, merchant ship, was because they realized they hit something and they had to go back and see what they hit. But if it happened at the 2:30 time, which our official U.S. government says it happened at 2:30, it means they passed up our Navy ship. It was a clear night. It was at night, but look, you still see ships at night because it's a busy area there. It means they turned and hit it on purpose. All right. So the investigation is underway. So if I were to comment on all of the various conspiracies that people, then you would want to keep an eye on what happened there. The other thing, again, Russia, Syria, planes. The U.S. shut down a Syrian plane the other day, all right? Now, Turkey shut down a Russian plane a while back, and what's going on over Syria is the United States is flying planes, Russia is flying planes, and supposedly the United States and Russia are just coordinating. They got an open line and channel of communication. But the thing on the ground is supposedly everybody is hitting ISIS. But Russia believes that if Syria falls apart, becomes like another Libya or whatever, that it's going to be a destabilizing of that whole region. And so even though Assad, the president of Syria, is an ally of Putin, Russia has serious concerns that if we're just in there, and then we have rebel groups that we back up on the ground, some of the rebel groups are indeed terrorist groups, the ones we back. Okay, that's not a secret. Not all of them. There's sincere Syrians that are wanting to fight for their liberation, revolution. So, during this whole thing, every now and then, Syrian planes will bomb the so-called freedom fighters that the U.S. is backing, and they'll kill them. So they were going to do that, or doing that the other day. So we shot down a Syrian plane. Now, Russia has made a statement, and they go before the UN and all, and say, as of now, the U.S. really has no legal authority to be flying and engaging in a military campaign over Syria. That's the official position, which is questionable. We've never declared war there, and we got stuff going on for a long time. All right? Well, the media begins spinning some of this. Then we shot down a Russian drone, I believe, yesterday. And Russia then made the statement that everything past the Euphrates River, they're going to count as a target. Now, I don't think any of this is really a bluff, and I've talked about the Russia thing before. But what you do have right now is some of the media reported on this. And they said, some people believe that the problem now is that Trump, for some reason, is giving too much leeway to Russia, for Russia to actually be flying planes over Syria. You see now? So it'll become, obviously he's doing this because he's got collusion with Russia, without actually saying all of this whole thing started under Obama. All of this Russians flying over and the U.S. flying over at the same time, carrying out bombing raids, it started under Obama. And there were people under Obama that wanted to start what was called a no-fly zone. I think Hillary Clinton said it. Sort of like, we forbid anybody, Russia, Syria, to fly over certain areas. Look, Syria and their ally Russia have every right to be flying because Russia has an agreement with a sovereign country called Syria and the leader, Assad, to be working there. The U.S. really has no legal right to be there at all. And then we make statements. The U.S. makes statements. We're putting Assad on notice that our men and our planes, we have every right of self-defense. Can you imagine if Russia and Syria were in our country, dropping bombs, supporting whoever? Black Lives Matter is rising up against Trump, and they're starting an armed rebellion. Okay, I'm giving an example. And can you imagine if Russia and Syria said, we're going to start supporting some of the radical groups that are trying to overthrow Trump or Obama, whoever. Imagine if Russia and Syria were actually dropping bombs, heading up towards Washington and saying, we're supporting you. And can you imagine if the United States shot down a Syrian or Russian plane over our territory here in the U.S.? And can you imagine Russia and Syria saying, we're warning you, United States, we have every right to defend ourselves. You would say, you're attacking our country. You're illegally dropping bombs into our country. And you're going to say you're defending you. That's what we're doing there. But the thing I wanted you to see, I've commented on this a lot before, the Russia thing, the Syria thing. But I want you to see that the media already is putting a little spin. Like, why would Trump, because that's what it was reported, some believe Trump is giving too much leeway to Russia. So why would he do? Even though he's really tougher right now on Russia. There'll be a conspiracy on that, but he's tougher right now than Obama was in some of the responses, the Tomahawk missiles that hit the Syrian airport, okay? Now, some of you might not be familiar with all that, but this is now what I wanted you to begin seeing. Fake news is not obviously fake news, meaning most people spot it. But fake news is at times when the population of our country, through the way the media presents things, and there are, I'm not going to mention the other conspiracy video. I was visiting a friend. I got a few teaching videos coming up. But there are questionable things that happened in this country and in the history of this country, who many people, when they just look at these things, big events, that say, oh, in some of these things it's obvious the U.S. government official report lies. And there's like 50-something% of the U.S. population in some of these big things that believe, yes, indeed, the government's official thing on it is a lie. The silly, not silly, but the Genowitz case, the G.I. Joe case, if they could have presented it the way they were trying to, because at that point, the cop who shot himself, but they were looking for 3 people, at that point they went out so much publicly and saying it was a killing, it was an ambush, and they just didn't want it to come out that he killed himself because he was involved in illegal stuff. And so even though some local people, there was a retired cop that worked on the same department, this came out as I was watching this case a few years ago, he even called down to his own police department and said, tell the truth or I'm going to come down there, and he made a threat to his own, he was a retired captain or something. So they all knew, but they wanted to cover it up for the sake of face. And I'll end it real quick now. The video came out. Look, the Castile shooting. The officer that shot, he pulled over. It's famous now. But a new video comes out last night after they just found this officer innocent. The video came out. A cop pulled over a black man and a black girl. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. And the lady had her young little daughter in the car. And when the cop pulled over that car, the girlfriend began streaming video live on Facebook after the shooting, not before the shooting. And when that happened, it, made notoriety. But what the girlfriend had on the famous Facebook live stream of that shooting, she didn't have the actual confrontation with the officer. She didn't record that. She started rolling video after the shooting, which still looked bad enough. And so he went to trial. Well, what you saw on the girlfriend's video, the black girl, was saying, "Why did you shoot him? You asked him for his license, sir, and he was going to get his license, and you just shot him." And the poor young black girl is trying to tell her mom, "Don't worry, Mom, he won't shoot you." Now that went to trial. I'm sure, I didn't follow the trial, but I'm sure in the trial, the officer said, I'm sure he denied that the man said to him, Castile said to him, "Okay, I'm going to get my license." And I'm sure the officer said, "I asked him if he had a gun," which the black man said, I have a license to carry a weapon, I'm letting you know that. And I'm sure the officer said, and then right after he said he had a gun, he reached for something. Okay, now the jurors didn't have the actual video of that encounter until yesterday, which came out on the World News. I'll have to link it now. Why this video came out, I'm assuming it's dash cam video. It looks like it's dash cam from the police cruiser, because you have the audio of the cop. That cop was guilty of murder. And look, because the video showed him go up to that black man, just like the girlfriend said. And the video showed him ask him, "Sir, do you have a gun?" And the man, you can hear him say yes, but it's legal. And then you could hear him say, "But I'm reaching for my license," and all. You could see that they found that cop innocent. Look, he's guilty, minimum, of manslaughter. I read a statistic in the Corpus paper and I think it was just Texas, but out of 300 people who died at the hands of police in Texas over a period of time, there was only, I think, 3 convictions, or 3 cases where cops were fired or something. And there's just a tendency to say, these people are lying, these people are lying. And the only time that it comes out, and the video was released last night. So I'll end it with that. I'm not sure what other news things, there's other news things, but I want you to keep an eye on that merchant ship story, the Filipino merchant ship, okay? Because you're already beginning to see a discrepancy and a quick sharp turn. If you look at the trajectory of that ship that night, made a sharp turn. And is it possible that some groups, ISIS or whoever, or just people that don't like us, said, "Go and ram that ship. Now's the chance." And look, they almost sunk it. They almost sunk our battleship. Okay? This is number 1.